All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. So we are going to finish up this section of notes by just talking about an interesting situation that happens to eukaryotic cells when we see these cells in multicellular organisms. Um, so when we talk multicellular organisms, right, remember your level of organization. So we have organism, we break that down into organ systems. Things like your heart, your blood vessels, your blood is all part of your cardiovascular system. We then can break that down into individual organs, your stomach, your large intestine, your small intestine, your tongue, right? Those are all organs. Break that down into tissues, and then break that down even further into the individual cells. So here's the thing. When we talk about multicellular organisms, those organisms need to be able to coordinate the activities of their cells so that they can coordinate the activities of those tissues, that coordinate the activities of that organ, that coordinate the activities of that organ system, so that you as an entire organism function and you're doing the job that you need to do in that particular situation in that moment in time. And in order for that to happen, that means that these cells have to be able to communicate with each other. But back that up, these cells don't have a mouth and eyes and sensory organs in order to communicate the way we think about communication. We can't talk, we can't see, we can't touch things. So your cells are all communicating based on chemistry, based on the molecules that exist. Proteins, um, salt concentrations, water concentrations, so on and so forth. And so they need ways to get those molecules from one cell to the next. When we look at things like your plant cells, they have an interesting situation in the sense that they have that rigid cell wall. So in order for them to be able to communicate with the cell next door to them, they need a way to get materials to them. Um, and it's not really easy to get materials across that cell wall. So what they have are these things called plasmodesmata. All right, and really these are just little pores or little channels that connect one cell to the cell next to it. So they can exchange proteins, they can exchange salts and water and things like that that can go through these little pores, these little channels from one cell to the next to expedite that communication so that that entire set of cells in that area can all communicate with each other and coordinate their function so that no one cell is doing too much or not doing enough, that ends up throwing the entire plant out of balance. In the case of animal cells, we also have some interesting things that are solutions or problems, I should say, that we need solutions for. So when we look at those plant cells, those cell walls are what's going to hold all of those cells together, keep them connected, and to build tissues out of them. Animal cells don't have that. So how do we get one animal cell to connect to the next so that we can hold those tissues together, so that we can hold our organs together, so that we can ultimately hold us together? And so animal cells have these extra structural components in this thing called their extracellular matrix, which is what we're looking at here. You may see it shortened to ECM, extracellular matrix, right? And so you've got all sorts of fibers, carbohydrates, collagen, fibronectin, glycolipids, glycoproteins, the whole nine yards, that are being connected here, and that will also connect to the same thing on the cell that would be on the opposite side. Sort of think of them like Velcro. It's kind of the best analogy that I've come up with over the years to tell kids how to think about this at the level that we're talking about it. So you have Velcro on one side of a cell, Velcro on the other side of the cell, we stick them together and they stick. And so that extracellular matrix functions as support, functions as the way for cells to adhere, that adhesion, they stick together. It's also going to help things to move around and to regulate each other. So some of those proteins are meant to be receptors to get communication signals in and tell the cell what to do, um, so on and so forth. So when we look at animal cells in these tissues, They've got these three major junctions here. And so this is a whole tissue together. So lots and lots of cells are going on here. And different levels and different proteins and different carbohydrates in those extracellular matrices make these different junctions. So at the top of any given tissue, you'll have these tight junctions that form. And those tight junctions, their job really is to create a sort of watertight seal around all the cells below it. So all of your cells down here are swimming in extracellular fluid, tissue fluid, or if you take anatomy and physiology, or AP eventually, we'll talk about interstitial fluid. It's tissue fluid. It's the waters and the sugars and the salts and the proteins that surround your cells at all times to keep them moist and allow things to move around. But we don't want you sitting in your chair just kind of oozing fluid all over the place. And so you get those tight junctions at the top there to prevent that fluid loss. If you've ever picked a scab off and you get sort of that clear fluid that leaks out of it, that is because you destroyed that tight junction that was forming in that scab until your cut or scrape could heal. And so you've destroyed that tight junction and now you're just leaking fluid until your body can come in and seal that back up again. Um, Others, you've got desmosomes, or what we see here in the picture as anchoring junctions. These are sort of that Velcro idea in just being able to fasten cells together, keep them connected in that tissue so they don't go sloshing off somewhere that they shouldn't be. And then you also have gap junctions or communicating junctions. And these are very similar to those plasmodesmata that we saw in your plant cells. Cells in a tissue want to be able to coordinate their function quickly, so rather than needing to get molecules out of their cell and into the next cell, they can form these gap junctions or these communicating junctions where they're just channels directly from one cell cytoplasm to the next, and they can send molecules back and forth that